This has always been one of my favorite comic book sellers to buy from. Why do you hate him so much? Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order of comic books that I placed in the fall of 2023 from the seller Parman on the comic book selling platform Atomic Avenue. I was thinking the other day, like some of these orders that I placed with Atomic Avenue, it was kind of like the good old days, so to speak, of having a place where you could regularly go and find comic books at a reasonable price at high grade conditions, from that very fine to near mint to also a place where I got a lot of 9/8 candidates and a lot of actually slabbed 9/8s as well. And one of the sellers that I would get a lot of 9/8s from is the seller Parman. When I would go through all of the different sellers on Atomic Avenue, I would keep track of the conditions of each book so that I could figure out which seller would consistently send me high grade comics if I were to only buy near mint copies from every seller. Because what I found over time is that not every seller really understood how to grade appropriately. So I really had to understand what near mint was for that particular seller. Parman was, and I say this in the past tense just because I'm not buying books from Atomic Avenue anymore, but he was always a seller that was consistently above a 9.0 on average. Definitely fell in that very fine near mint range and above, and would often have a really good candidate that maybe would need a very straightforward, I would say maybe like a quick press type of press just to bump that book into the 9/8 range. And also would get great customer service from Parman. Books were shipped very timely. He does ship media mail, which you'll see in a second. That always drives me crazy. But I think that I have received some negativity about him or maybe some other sellers on Atomic Avenue or any real place that advertises books in near mint, because our expectations for comic book conditions are really high. And so when you see near mint, you expect to get not only 9.4s, but you're expecting all of these great 9/8 candidates. And so when you get a book and you're like, I think this is more like a VF or a VF minus, there's disappointment, there's hatred, there's just this violent negative reaction where I'm never ordering from the seller again. And one of the things that I have learned is that you need to buy repeatedly from the same seller several times before you can really start to notice a trend or an average, or really speak to your confidence in terms of what your true expectations can be from really any seller, not just Parman. And I feel bad for Parman. I feel like I'm picking on him. And like I said, he's been one of the nicer sellers, more accommodating sellers, and always seems to have books that I'm really interested in, books from the 90s. Not so much silver and bronze, mostly like copper, early modern. And I would say a lot of the books that I pick up from Parman, they're not necessarily filler, but they're more of kind of a bread and butter, entry level value add type of comic book. And you'll see in this order several examples. So, not a lot of big keys, certainly not grails, but just books from creators that we love, nostalgic books, and best of all, very, very affordable comics. So let me get to the unboxing. I'll go ahead and open up this order, and I'll show you what I picked up from the seller Parman on Atomic Avenue. Okay, here is the shipment of books that I received from Parman. He refers to himself, his store on Atomic Avenue, as Rocky Mountain Books, but the username is Parman. I always refer to him as Parman. It's interesting because this is from Colorado, and when I think of Colorado, Rocky Mountain, Denver, I think of Mile High Comics. Maybe that's why Parman also gets an additional bit of adjacent hatred. I don't know. But this was a shipment from an order that I placed back at the end of September 2023, still going through my backlog of orders. And yes, this was sent media mail, which I can't stand, but it was not tampered with or opened by the post office. But now I will go ahead and tamper with it and open it up. All right, there we go. Very well packed. Packing peanuts, kind of a homegrown cardboard corner protection system that Parman has. So I really appreciate the way that he packs and sends books. One other nice gesture that Parman always includes is a free comic book. One of the very first order, might have been my first order that I placed with Parman Rocky Mountain Books on Atomic Avenue. He included a free copy of the Spider-Man #1 Todd McFarlane book, and that free copy was the one that I sent in for the Todd McFarlane signature series event that got a 9.8. And I'm looking at it right now, and I think of Parman. I don't know him personally, but I do think about him, I guess, and think about just that sort of old school sort of comic book collector and seller where it's like, hey, let me throw in a free book. So I'm hoping that this book on the back here that doesn't have a bag and board is the free book, and it is, yeah. But still, and it's very beat up. You can see on the spine there. I mean, just tons of spine ticks. This is a newsstand copy of Incredible Hulk, $3.93, and just a nice free issue, free comic book that Parman threw in there at no additional charge. I had ordered enough in this order where I unlocked free shipping, so he included that in this wonderful media mail shipment. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is more of a, I would say, if you're looking to add value to your collection and you're looking to get in at kind of an entry level as far as like what is this process like, these were the kind of orders that I would place with Parman on Atomic Avenue, where very low barrier to entry, very easy to find, but where I had hand selected a lot of these books for specific reasons because of the low cost and high ceiling potential. And then again, getting to know Parman over time to understand that he would typically send me books in really great condition. The first book is Avengers #1. This is from 1998. I believe this is the third volume of Avengers. There's the original and then the Rob Liefeld volume. And then this one is from Kurt Busiek and George Perez. So this was a lot of fun to see George Perez come back on Avengers, and always nice to pick up a first issue. Next is Batman 440. Also interior art on this one by George Perez, as well as the cover art. And if you stay to the end, I'll show you what I paid for these books so you can kind of see if it's not really clear exactly why I was targeting these books. Hopefully it'll make sense in the order summary. Another example, Batman 456, cover art by Norm Breyfogle. Tough book to get in high grade because of the Batman shadow. This one looks to be pretty good. And, you know, I would say this is probably typical of a book and its condition that I would receive from Parman, where it's probably, it can't be any worse than a 9.2. It certainly has the potential to be a 9.4 and above, but just a lot of books in this era that he makes available on Atomic Avenue. This one, I don't know if this is probably the centerpiece of the order, but if it's not, it probably should be. This is Elektra Assassin #1, written by Frank Miller, cover and interior art by Bill Sienkiewicz. Love the series, but issue #1, probably the most famous out of the 8-issue series. Now, looking at this, I'm kicking myself because I did participate in the Frank Miller signature series signing event from a little while ago and hope to get those slabs back soon, but this is probably one that I would have loved to have Mr. Miller sign, and with all the white space, lots of great area for him to sign, and then hopefully add Sienkiewicz at a later time if he ever does a signature series signing event. The only thing I'll say on this one, the backing board size, the book's kind of hanging over, so it is possible that, you know, when that happens, that the corners could typically suffer, and so you can see in this close-up why I'm just kind of bothered by it, because it is getting protection from the bag, but if I did that any more, any more pressure on the bag, that corner would be dinged. So I can't wait to get this rebagged and boarded, but a really, really strong, nice copy from what I can tell at a quick glance, absence of any color breaking spine ticks. So this could have been a 9.8 candidate that I could have sent in. And that's my fault for letting these orders sit around for so long, because I would have had a really nice copy of Electra Assassin #1. So thank you, Parman, but shame on me. Next is Fantastic Four 218, cover art by Al Milgrom and Joe Sinnott from February of 1980. So again, you're getting into bronze, copper, early modern is really the era that Parman has available on his store. And again, while not a key, just a really nice copy of Fantastic Four that I can add to my run. Continuing on with Fantastic Four, this is Fantastic Four 348, and I got a direct and a newsstand version of this issue. This is the first of a few fun issues of Fantastic Four. Not super memorable, except that it introduces kind of like what's your all-star team for the Fantastic Four, and if you had your all-star or maybe Hall of Fame type of creative team, who would you put on it? And this is written by Walt Simonson with cover and interior art by Arthur Adams. Now, Art Adams didn't do the interiors for many books, even though he's probably one of the most well-known creators, and it's really kind of interesting. So I think the series that really gets studied the most would be Longshot, but these issues of Fantastic Four are also fun, where you could just kind of flip through and just really enjoy and appreciate and take in all of that great Art Adams artwork. And yes, the all-star Fantastic Four would be Hulk, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. Be interesting to hear if you would have a different team these days of maybe your all-star four characters to put in the Fantastic Four. I think at the time this was probably a no-brainer, these four, but maybe now there may be some different members of the team. That'd be interesting. And then continuing on, we have Fantastic Four 349, where we have the new Fantastic Four, where that new team was first introduced in issue 348, and now we have them here together with the original team members in 349, along with some Skrulls, and then a gratuitous cameo by the Punisher, and of course Mole Man. But just, man, always love these covers with multiple characters, and again, cover art by Art Adams, inked by Art Thibert, and even a custom price box, lower corner box there. Very cool. Fantastic Four 349. And then just continuing the theme of, again, entry-level value picks, great creators, great characters, nostalgic eras. These orders, while they may not hit you over the head with like, oh my gosh, this is just a super mega key, it's just perfect for me. It always made me feel good to place an order like this, almost like maybe if I had lost out on an auction or I was looking for some sort of, I don't know, like just something that's comforting. I would place an order like this from Parman on Atomic Avenue. Here's another one, Ghost Rider #5, Ghost Rider, Punisher, cover art by Jim Lee. That's really all you could say about this issue, but that's what makes it awesome, what makes it great. Here we go, just continuing the same theme. Incredible Hulk 342 with cover art by Todd McFarlane. Can't get over the leader and how Todd McFarlane drew him here. This one's tough. This one has a pretty bad miswrap. I don't believe any of this is color breaking. I think it's just misleading just because of the back cover coming over. So sometimes you can get away with this and it's just a miswrapped book. Maybe it's not the most presentable copy, but it still very well could be a 9.8 candidate. I do see at the top here, it's either some bindery tearing or just it's probably just a rip in the corner here. So that probably removes its entry into a 9.8 candidacy. And this is an example too of if you were seeking this book out and you bought this one book and you got it and you're like, yep, look at that corner. I can't stand this seller. I can't stand any of these sellers, because the way that Atomic Avenue and some of these online stores work is all of the photos are stock images. So you don't have an opportunity. You're buying these sight unseen, and it can be frustrating, and I understand that. What I try to do is play the percentages, and for the most part, I'm going to get some really nice copies, and then maybe some that don't hit on that 9-8 candidate classification, but overall, I'm okay with it just because of the sheer number of books that I picked up. I believe there's 21 comics in this order. They can't all be 9.8s, but they can't all be like very fine copies either. That's kind of how I look at it. You take the good with the bad. Here's a couple of really good copies of Marvel Comics Presents number 76. Barry Windsor Smith on cover art and writing and illustrating the main story in Marvel Comics Presents. They typically would have 4 different stories in just the standard comic book. And so the Weapon X story probably filled maybe 2 or 3 comics in total, but it spanned something like 8 or 10 issues. And I like picking this book up for a number of reasons. I try to see if there's a way to get this one in a 9.8. It's almost impossible the way that this cover is designed. It is incredibly dark, and you can see here between these two. So this is probably the better copy, and it has already a couple of spine ticks down there that break color. And then this one is even worse and has a gigantic crease right here in the corner. So again, you would get this copy and be very, very upset and curse Rocky Mountain to the high heavens, or you might order it and get this one, and it's like, okay, it's probably a near mint copy, quote unquote near mint in that sort of 8.5 to 9.4 range. I would understand that, and certainly for the price that I paid for these, it's understandable and expected, and it's fine. And so to avoid that, I just buy a couple of copies, and then it kind of adds that additional insurance where I'm getting at least the better of the two because I've ordered 2, and then can figure out what I want to do with the lesser copy, the book in lesser condition. Now, going back to that first issue of Spider-Man, this is the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man run from 1990. This is issue number 2, and I have bought a number of these from this seller over the years, again, because it makes it very affordable to pick up, sometimes around the original cover price or even below. And I have received a number of 9.8 candidates of these, and I've received a number that aren't, and that's fine, but the cost is so minimal that it's worth the gamble. Now, this one here, I'll give you an example. Again, down here in the corner, there is some rounding there and a little bit of color loss. So, it'll most likely not end up be graded a 9.8. Same thing with this corner up here, but might fit the bill for a nice 9.4, 9.6 copy. And a lot of times you might see these listed somewhere for anywhere from like $3 to $5, and it's cheaper just to pick them up from Parman on Atomic Avenue. The very next issue, I picked up 3 copies of Spider-Man number 3, and one thing I like to do is I'll go ahead and grab the direct edition. Again, very affordable, just like issue number 2. And then I will also grab a newsstand copy. And sometimes the newsstand copies can fetch a bit of a premium. And if he has a number of these in his inventory and he's kind of sending them out, it's possible that one of the newsstands could be in high grade, maybe even a 9.8. This one is not a 9.8. It does have a little bit of color loss down there in the corner. And then I started to notice somewhere in here is, I think right there is a spine tick. You can kind of see through the bag. It is on the book there. Another small dent and crease right in there. And then again, just some slight softening or color breaking right there at the top corner. But I'm always looking for the potential. What is the ceiling on the book? And these books are really easy to find. And because there is that premium on the newsstands, it is a good resource to take a chance and gamble on those. The last Spider-Man I picked up, this is Spider-Man number 10. Man, Todd McFarlane really, he knew what he was doing. Kind of talking about that all-star of a Fantastic Four lineup. Here we've got Wendigo, Spider-Man, Wolverine, all illustrated by Todd McFarlane. For the couple of dollars that I spent, it's worth the enjoyment just to crack these open and pour through the artwork and just remembering how it made me feel when I first saw McFarlane's art on Spider-Man. The last 3 books are all Wolverine. This is Wolverine number 7, My plan was to take the original ongoing Wolverine series and try to get the first 10, 12, maybe 20 issues, try to get them all in as high grade as possible. And this was an issue that I was missing. Here we have Wolverine as Patch and Hulk as Joe Fixit. Not as popular or famous as the other cover with those two on it. And one of my strategies, if you can't find or afford the keys, then get the books around it. And that's a good example. Next is Wolverine number 16. This is cover art by Kevin Nolan. I think this is a good book to pick up just because you do have some collectors that collect very specific creators, and Kevin Nolan does have his own following here. So while it may not be my favorite issue of Wolverine or cover art of Wolverine, Kevin Nolan certainly has a following. You can think of his style like alongside Mike Mignola. So I always like to pick up those types of issues. And then the last one, Wolverine 36. This is cover art by Mark Silvestri. Now, Mark Silvestri has a signature series event coming up. I am considering participating in that as well. I don't know if this book would make the cut, but Silvestri always drew just a really awesome Wolverine smoking a cigar. This whole cover is crazy. So these are the books that I picked up from Rocky Mountain Books on Atomic Avenue. As I mentioned, very specifically, the kind of books I look for by creators that I love, not keys, but definitely books that have a little bit of value, that can pop if I can find them at a 9.8. And if they don't end up being a 9.8, I'm fine with it. I can move on from them. I can add them to the runs of all of these series that I've been collecting, and I'm perfectly fine and happy with that because I didn't pay a lot for these books. So let me show you what I ended up paying for each of these comics. We'll take a look at the fair market value for these comics in near mint, and then compare those values to the graded fair market values to figure out if it's worth sending any of these off to CGC. So let's take a look at the order summary of this order that I placed from Rocky Mountain Books on Atomic Avenue. All right, here is the order summary for the 20 book order. This order was placed on September 24th, 2023. I did not have to pay tax or shipping on these books. It's another great benefit of buying from certain sellers, to either unlock free shipping or minimize those additional costs that will drive up your per book cost. So it's another reason, while again, a lot of hatred and negativity are thrown towards Parman's way, one of the positives for me is that the cost of the book is the cost of the book. So if I'm picking up Avengers #1 from 1988 for $1.40, it's $1.40. There's no additional tax or shipping on that book, which really allows me to stretch the value margin that I can add to my collection. So you can see the summary here. I was invoiced $71.15 for these 20 books. And then as I move to the right, what I want to see is the potential fair market value add if I were to keep these books raw. And you can see that it has the potential to add almost $106 to my collection. And we'll take a look at what's driving some of this. Fantastic Four 348, the newsstand edition. Cover price has that as a $13 book. I paid $2.25 to acquire it for a nice $10.75 value add. So really, without going through each of the book, you can kind of get the gist of what I did here. You see a lot of low numbers, $1.90, $2.70, $1.25, and then when you're looking at the cover price fair market value, you're seeing somewhere from 2 to 3, in some cases 4 times the cost, and you kind of multiply that by 20 issues, and that's how I arrived at adding over $100 of comic book value to my collection. When you go through these books, there's nothing really jumping out at you other than a lot of great nostalgia, characters, cover art. So there's a lot of greatness in this order, but just, again, not that big significant key to get super excited about. The one book that maybe not so super, Incredible Hulk 342, at the time I paid $8.80 for it. It has an $8 cover price fair market value, so that one was a minor loss of 80 cents. That was the only negative book in this order. And really strong newsstand value adds. Talked about 348. Marvel Comics Presents number 76. Cost me $6.25. That's an $11 book. according to cover price. And Spider-Man #3, those Spider-Man books I talked about, there's no shortage of them. The supply is plentiful, but just filled with potential. Spider-Man #3, that newsstand copy, I spent $2.10 to pick up that book. It's valued at $11 by cover price. And even the direct copies, $9 for Spider-Man 3 Direct, cost me $1.90. Spider-Man #2 at $7 cost me $2.70. And one of my favorite pickups, Elektra Assassin #1, $4.75 to pick that up. Now, for me as a comic book collector, part of what I do is I consider getting my books professionally graded, but I try to select only books that have that additional margin value built into it in terms of looking at what it costs to grade the book, looking at what I paid for the book raw, and then figuring out just, is the book worth it in this grade? So let me go ahead and assign the grades. I have not graded these yet, so I'm going to go ahead and give it the default near mint of 9.4, even if there are people that argue with me about what a near mint grade is or what my expectations are. And if I were to send all of these near mint 9.4 books off to CGC as is, would it be worth it to do so? Yes, in summary, after all of your trouble, you could potentially add $115 of value to your collection if these did grade out as a 9.4. But that assumes you could sell the books at this value or this price at a 9.4. There's going to be selling fees, and then there's always going to be buyers that want to negotiate with you to bring the cost of the book down for them. So it just may not be worth the hassle to send these in. But you can see, even in a 9.4, some of these do have value. Incredible Hulk 342 in a 9.4, $58, with a potential CGC value add of $25. Fantastic Four 348, the newsstand edition, $43 for a $17 value add. Ghost Rider #5, $41 in a CGC 9.4, and those Spider-Man #3s in a 9.4, about $40. That seems a little high for me, but we'll go with it for now just to kind of keep all the numbers consistent in terms of how I pull values in for graded books. And then the last one, Wolverine #16, the Kevin Nolan book, as I mentioned, maybe at first glance, not a Wolverine book that you're selecting, but in terms of a value, you can see in a 9.4, $42 for a $14 value add. Now, the last thing I'll do, this is just for fun. I don't believe that these are all 9.8 candidates, but let's just pretend here for a second. If they are, then what sort of potential, as I talked about, I'm always looking for potential. And I don't know if that CGC number jumped out at you or not, but it did for me. $1,350. Now, I kind of say that in jest, and I'm trying not to laugh because I don't think that's realistic. But this is a pretty, I hate to say it, but like really basic, straightforward kind of order. And to have that much potential value is exactly why I bought these books. Let's just quickly go over the big ones. Wolverine 36 at $180 for that one in a 9.8. $109 for Wolverine 7. I'm just kind of eyeballing the triple digit books. Marvel Comics presents #76, the newsstand copy, $150. That's why I will pick that book up and take the chance to try and track down that 9.8 candidate. Incredible Hulk 342, we mentioned that. That's the Todd McFarlane book, $143 in a 9.8. Fantastic Four 348, the new Fantastic Four, their first appearance, $150 for that book in a 9.8. I don't have values for that if it's a newsstand. And looking at the relative value as compared with the direct, there's going to be just a slight premium on that book. So that could be $160, $175 in a 9.8, possibly there. But in this calculation, it's not even being considered. So this could even be closer to $1,500 in total. Fantastic Four 218 at $119, Batman 456, $101. And then circling all the way back to Spider-Man, again, just honing in on some of these books from the 90s that are plentiful, that if you can find in high grade, it's not completely junk. They're over $50 each in a 9.8, with that newsstand copy of issue #3 doubling up to $100. And what this means is that specifically for the price that I paid for each book and comparing the price, the fees to get the books graded, the shipping back and forth, that if they were to hit a 9.8, that it's worth the risk because the potential value add margin is high enough and strong enough that it is worth your while. Now, again, I don't believe all of these are 9.8s, but some of them very well could be. And it's really kind of orders like this that have become staples of my comic book collection over the years. That it's not just adding filler to the collection, it's really allowing me to get very entry level, affordable copies of some books that have some sneaky value, where I can then take the 5 or 6 copies that maybe I've ordered in total from Parman over the years and narrow it down to that 9.8 candidate, if it's one or as many as I have. But for the most part, it'll end up being some percentage of those issues, and then I can send those off for grading. And I much prefer to do that than just buying that one issue from that one seller, crossing my fingers, where my expectations for that one issue just may be too high. When I'm ordering 10, 20 books at a time, yes, I have certain expectations, but if a few books fall below those expectations, it doesn't bother me as much, and I really appreciate the books that Parman has made available to me over the years on Atomic Avenue. I would love down the road to be able to order from him again once this hiatus is over. But until then, you're welcome to check him out on Atomic Avenue. Let me know what you think about this order. Are these types of strategies that I've employed, are these still relevant today? Would love to get your thoughts and feedback. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.